every single one of our major customers and minor customers all shut their doors overnight.
You need the right people in the right place at the right time. And sometimes you have the right people in the right place, but at the wrong time.
I've got to keep going forward. I've got to keep looking for revenue streams. I've got to keep looking for growth, keep looking at new ways of doing things.
But, what's the culture like at the business? What do we stand for, the values?
I've got to tick that box on my personal development program I don't really want to be here.
Scaling up a business isn't easy. If it were, we wouldn't have less than 4% of businesses scaling beyond 10 employees, typically around £1 million turnover or so, and less than 1% beyond 50 employees. But the contribution that we make as owner-managers to our economies is immense and should never be underestimated, yet it can be a tough gig for all of us at times. Only other business owners truly understand the challenges that we face, and we aim to make things a little easier through ScaleUp Radio with guests who have been where we are now, may have faced some of the challenges that we're facing, and can offer their thoughts and advice on what has worked for them, as well as what didn't. We have also combined many of the lessons from our interviews and through working with hundreds of owner-managers over the last 10 years or so into a practical scale-up handbook called the Entrepreneurial Scale-Up System, or ESUS. And it's for owner-managers like you as you navigate your own scale-up journey. And you can order a copy through your favourite online book retailer or by going to all the W's, esusgroup.co.uk. On this week's episode of ScaleUp Radio, we join the latest ScaleUp Club with the panel discussion and presentations around the theme of scalability this time and something called the TVR test. And this is a great litmus test of a business's scalability. By learning what you should be prioritizing in your business, by applying the TVR test to your key products and services, you can start to scale and accelerate your growth. Most of us get caught in what has been described as the owner's trap, essentially where we create the kind of business that is over-reliant on us. In this episode, Louise explains how to use the TVR framework to help break that cycle and to reduce the dependency of the business on you. The information presented by Louise is a brilliant eye-opener in terms of where your business is and how you can begin to create a more resilient and scalable business. In addition to a Q&A session, we also hear from various business owners in this episode as they talk about where their businesses are and how using the TVR test has given them ideas of how to grow and scale appropriately. We hear from David Lyons of Unique IQ, Claire Vale of Science Solutions, Dave Perigo of Perigo Associates, Steve Bradstock of First Base Solutions, and Jenny Powell of JDP Procurement. So let's go over to Louise.
This month's challenge is all about scalability. So what we're looking today to try and help you is to just give you a quick little tool that will help you look about whether you've got a scalable business and a couple of quick thoughts on what makes a scalable business and help you to look at that. Many of us started our businesses because we're good at something, because we wanted freedom and control to choose the kind of work we do, the people we do it with, and ultimately the money we earn. But unfortunately, quite a lot of us end up in the owner's trap. Lots of the reasons we do things comes down to freedom, but what actually tends to happen is most of us get caught in this owner's trap, and I'll try and give you a quick whistle-stop tour of that. There's plenty of other information out there if you're interested in getting more information. But we get caught in there because we created the kind of business that's over-reliant on us as individuals, us as the business owner. So when we start the business, it's generally just us. We may be on our own, we perhaps have a co-owner, and we're the ones doing everything, including the selling. We have most of the industry knowledge and expertise. We start to work with a couple of clients, and because we're probably good at what we do, maybe even making widgets, they come to us even if we have a team, because we want to please our customers and pride ourselves on our own customer service. When they ask us if we can do other things as well, perhaps tuits, generally, we tend to say yes. So we start to extend the range of things we do. Okay, so we move away. We say, right, yes, we can do that. Yes, we can do that. We start offering more and more, and we start doing more things. And when we start to do that, even if we do end up getting other people on board, it's quite possible that we're the only ones who can really deliver. and deliver all of those things well. And I know from working with a few of you, that's something that numbers of you will recognize. You tend to build that business around something that you're really good at, and therefore it can be quite hard to let it go. But what happens is we're the ones that end up doing all the delivering, the dealing with customers. And BizSmart have been through exactly that same process when it started with just Kevin and I right at the very beginning. So the customer keeps coming back to us, and we keep getting dragged into delivery. We probably deliver it really well, which means the customer's happy and keeps coming back to us. So we start the cycle all over again. It becomes about us as the people who are doing the delivering rather than the business itself. So we're caught in that trap, okay? Basically, all of the business or decisions come through us as the owner, and it's very difficult to scale a business like that. There will be a ceiling on how far you can take the business if that is what you're in. And interestingly, the owner's trap talks very much about the relationship with the customer, but you'll also find it in the relationship with your staff as well. If you are the one, if you like, and all of the staff are always coming to you for all of the answers and you are always giving to them, that's just as equally you're in the owner's trap, because the whole business, whether it's customer related or whether it's internally related, is too reliant on you. So how do you recognize the telltale signs? So none of this is rocket science. All we're trying to do today is just give you these little thoughts and get you to go, hang on a minute, yeah, I do recognize some of those. I do recognize that in myself a few times. So telltale signs, and one of the questions we ask regularly is how well would the business perform if you were unexpectedly away for 3 months? If the business slows down when you're on holiday or you take time off. Maybe customers are always coming to you with the problem, so they'll say, I'm not going to speak to them, I want to speak to you. I want to speak to only you. And it's the same with your employees. If they're not going through their teams and all they're interested in is talking to you, I think that's an example of the business being reliant on you. And maybe business growth has plateaued. So those are the 10 telltale signs. But how do we break the cycle? Okie dokie, we break the cycle in 2 ways. First of all, we meet this wonderful little creature called the hedgehog. And the hedgehog is a little tool that helps you work out what it is that you should be focusing your business on. So this is all about giving you the focus of the business. So 2 key concepts, this business around focus, and then the business around scalability, and this trifecta of scalability, the 3 things that link to scalability. So what is the hedgehog? The hedgehog is all to do with focus. And it's all about finding that red circle, it's definitely not a circle, that red triangle in the middle. So, and it's a really big important part of finding a scalable business is finding the one thing or the couple of things maybe in your business that are really going to help you grow it. So what we need to do is look at what you're good at, what you love doing, and what pays well. The more technical model talks about what can you be the best in the world at, what are you really passionate about, and what is your profit engine. And it's only when those 3 things come together that you'll find that's the focus of your business. So what is the thing you should be focusing on? It is really important, and one of the reasons why we like this graphic is it explains to you why 2 of them on their own just don't cut it. They don't provide you with that focus. Because if you're good at it and you love it, but it doesn't pay well, you'll be happy but poor. And I know there's a few of you in the room who will recognize that. You love it and it pays well, but you're no good at it. It's just a dream. You'll never get there with it. And if you're good at it and it pays well, but you hate it, you'll be rich but bored. Now, some of you may be happy with that. But actually what we're suggesting is try and find something that hits that sweet spot in the middle. So that's one of the key things in terms of a scalable business. And then we're just going to look at this idea of the trifecta of scalability. All that TVR stands for, really simply, is teachable, valuable, and repeatable. So for a product or service to be scalable, as opposed to just being able to grow, okay, it needs to meet these following criteria. So teachable, in other words, it can't be something that can only be done by you. Okay, has to be something you can teach to other people so that they can do it on your behalf and you can scale the business that way. It needs to be valuable to your customers. So something that they want, not just a commodity that they can get anywhere. How differentiated is it? How are you differentiating it? And it needs to have an element of repeatability. So it's ideally that your customers need on a recurring basis, or that might lead to additional service or product sales that are there rather than just a one-off. Try that again. A one-off purchase. Okay. So have a look at your businesses and consider how teachable, how valuable, and how repeatable they are. We do have a simple exercise, as you might imagine, that we can share with you and work with you on, but simply it's just a simple scoring out of 10 for each of the criteria that'll help you work out which are more scalable than others. So maybe look at your products and services. You can see again, just down the left-hand side, your products or services, the kind of things that you offer. And then just take the three different areas. So teachable, valuable or differentiated, and repeatable. And just give it a score out of 10. Okay. Go through all of your products or services and just give them a score. So, common challenge in the early days is that the business owner may do some consulting work relating to the business. They may have a particular area of expertise that the clients are prepared to pay well for as a one-to-one service. So that would probably score 8 or even 10 for value, but it's very low for teachable, possibly low for repeatable. But again, you need to make your judgments on this. So this is your way of looking at it. So just go through each of those areas, and that will give you the 1 or 2 products or services that are the one that has the highest TVR rating. And maybe that's the one that you should be thinking of concentrating on and focusing on in terms of growing and developing your business, because that's the key to being scalable. Okay. There is a natural sort of tension between the idea of valuable and teachable, as you might imagine, that the idea that, to be valuable, it has to be different, but to be teachable, you have to be able to teach it to other people. So there is this tension that's going on. It's more often than not something that's highly valuable and differentiated will be harder to teach. And particularly something that's not very teachable may not be that differentiated. Very teachable may not be that differentiated. So we may need to do a bit more thinking along those lines. Can we find a way to make a valuable service more teachable? Potentially, could we create something differentiated from a combination of lower value but teachable components? So can we put things together in a bundle? Can we find different elements of what we do that makes them more unique and differentiated, but that we can therefore teach them to other people? So I've kind of gone through a whistle-stop tour of the idea of teachable, valuable, and repeatable. And I just wondered, before I introduce Gary to talk to us about his insights, are there 1 or 2 quick questions that we might be able to answer for you? So I'm just going to stop sharing for a second. I've whistle-stop toured through that. Has there anybody got any quick questions? Might take 1 or 2. Have I completely blown you away?
No, Louise, I've just worked out that
Yes.
my most valuable thing I'm giving away almost. So everybody says, well, make it more expensive, but it's our door opener and it's also a fabulous way to get, achieve our mission. So it's obviously got a low score for teachable, but it's highly valuable and highly repeatable.
And it just have a go at that exercise, because it'll open your eyes to a few of the things that you're doing. And we've done it ourselves. We do definitely practice what we preach, and we've had a look at some of the products and services, and again done exactly the same as you have, Angela, and gone, that's a really valuable item, and we're just giving it away.
Yeah.
Interestingly, the in-flight checklist is an exact example of that from our point of view. Everybody tells us what an utterly wonderful tool it is, and yet we don't monetize that, to use a hideous word, as well as we should. So do that exercise. Anybody else got any comments or thoughts? Granger, anything you want to add before I introduce Gary?
Just to say, it is a really little simple exercise to do. I recently did it with a client, and she realised that actually 3 of her products were just consultancy, but one product that she's been working on really hit all those marks, and so she's now over the next year put a strategy together to actually put more effort into developing it, because she'd actually put it on the shelf because she didn't think it was actually useful to her as a business, but now she's realized actually that's something she will use to grow the business going forward. So sometimes your products and services that you don't think are the ones that will scale and grow are actually the ones, when you do that exercise, are the ones that really will grow and scale for your business, because they stop you being caught in that owner's trap.
Okay. Anybody recognize the owner's trap? Yeah, there's a few nods. Yeah, and some hands are excellent. Excellent. So hopefully what we've given you this morning is just a quick sort of thought and idea as to how you might get out of that wonderful owner's trap that I have to say we all find ourselves in at some point, and it's how we break out of it. Okay, so what I'd like to do now is introduce you to Gary Mulwiney of Platform 81. As I said, Platform 81 and Gary have been working with BizSmart and good friends of ours for some time. But he's going to talk to us about the sort of repeatability and recurring revenue element of this TVR model. Over to you, Gary.
Cool. Yeah, thank you very much. Morning, everyone. My name's Gary. I'm the technical director of a digital marketing agency called Platform 81. We're based in Bromsgrove. We've got offices up north in Manchester. And yeah, Kevin's just asked me to jump on to kind of run through how applying this TVR model to our business has helped it scale. So a bit of a real world example, I suppose, for you. So if I can offer any tips or insights, or if you guys can take anything from what we've learned, that's kind of the aim, I'm guessing. So as I mentioned, we're a digital marketing agency. We're pretty much the holy grail, I'd imagine, of sectors to be in for recurring revenue. So I'm sure, as you guys have seen, the tech sector in general leads itself very well to this model. So the likes of Apple, Microsoft, Adobe, even kind of your Netflixes and your Spotifys, they've all kind of moved to this recurring subscription model that's very, very popular. And it's something that we put a lot of focus on about 2 or 3 years ago. And it's really, really helped us scale the business. But in all honesty, it wasn't always this way. As I say, it's only something that we've kind of focused on for the last couple of years. But it has helped us scale. I think firstly, from a revenue point of view, if you're looking to grow your business and increase that revenue, the recurring side of the business, the repeatable elements that you can offer, it's a great way to achieve that. So to give you a bit of a real world example, as I say, we do web development. So traditionally for us, that means people coming to us, they pay us a one-off fee for developing and building the website. And previously, kind of that was the end of the relationship, which was great. Obviously, we're doing work, we're billing for it. But the unfortunate thing is, at the start of the following month, that meant for me as the person that's bringing in new business, it always meant I was starting the month at zero. So it's very, very difficult to kind of scale. So what we looked at is different kind of methods of recurring revenue. And as an agency, we offer digital marketing. I'm sure you've heard all the boring acronyms such as SEO, PPC, social, all those types of things. Now, the beauty for us is they are a monthly fee. And even more so lucky for us that they're often contracted to a 12-month term. Now, unlike the ad hoc work that we do, obviously once we land one, it's repeatable, and that work and that revenue is coming in every single month. So the kind of problem of no longer being at zero, is fixed. So if you can imagine, we're bringing in 2, 3, 4, 5 new clients doing this digital marketing every month. That business model, that recurring revenue, is allowing us to scale and kind of move up the ladder. So it's really been really great for us. As I say, it's something that we focused on the last 2 or 3 years. But what I've kind of personally found is that it's allowed me to make kind of decisions that I probably wouldn't have been able to make if we didn't have this recurring revenue coming in. So one of the first things that I've personally kind of found is that it really helps with kind of forecasting, because we know we've got this repeatable work. We know we've got this monthly revenue coming in. The risk to our business is a lot less, and it allows you to kind of forecast things in the future. So perhaps that I don't know, perhaps you could be looking at taking on staff, perhaps you could be looking at new premises, whatever you need to do, that kind of forecasting in the future becomes a lot easier because you know you've got this repeatable, recurring work coming in. So from that point of view, for us, the forecasting side, looking into the futures, been very, very good. I think Louise mentioned as well, kind of the owner's trap element to it. And for us as a business, that's really helped because, if you are a kind of small business or small to medium business, you often find yourself getting caught into the nitty gritty of day-to-day work. And it's very, very common. And, to be dragged back into day-to-day activities, it's a very, very difficult task. But again, this recurring revenue, it kind of limits that a little bit, because if it is teachable and it is repeatable, it does possibly give the option to bring in staff to do this work, which is the opportunity that we've managed to find ourselves in. Because now we've got staff that's doing this work, it's allowed me to kind of look down on the business a little bit, kind of step out of the business and, look at kind of more what our long-term goals would be. But, in general, it kind of gives you the opportunity to, grow the business, perhaps look at new services, whatever you want to do long-term, whether it's a sale, whether it's a franchise. It gives you options, really. I think for us, it's taking the pressure off a little bit. I think that kind of gives you a bit of a real world example. As I say, if there is any way of working in this recurring revenue to your business, I'd fully recommend it. I appreciate that in some businesses it's easier than others, but you perhaps like to think maybe 80% of businesses, there is some type of subscription model or recurring revenue that you could try and work in, just to help you scale, really. So I don't know whether there's anything else that you want me to mention, Louise, or anything in particular.
Well, what I'd like to do, actually, Gary, and apart from say thank you very much for sharing that little insight, is just open it up to see if there are any questions in the room, because you've taken us through your journey and the kind of things that you've found, and it is a fascinating thing, in terms of taking that breakthrough. Now some people don't want to grow their businesses beyond 9, but it is really interesting how, those that would like to but fail to, it's often to do with this idea of teachable, valuable and repeatable. And you made the point, Gary, that unless you can pass your knowledge and teach your knowledge and the way of doing things onto other people to grow the business in terms of employees, you can never take that step back, which is really important to grow a business, to look at the business and start. And you've all heard it. We're working in the business, not on the business. And as business owners, we need to be able to step back and have people who are working in the business while we work on it and have that overview. And that's where this idea of the hedgehog, the TVR, the recurring revenue model all come together to allow us to then take that step, should we want to take that step to drive the business through into that growth. So I can see that Sarah has a question. Sarah, would you like to ask your question?
I have a question around your subscription idea. So we are an HR company in principle, except for we are different. So we work in the creative sector. And to give you some context of that, there is at one end of it, the arts sector, which are often charities, and at the other end of that, film and TV. And they all act in such different ways. We've really struggled to have a subscription type model, like a retainer, because companies just are really struggle with the budgeting of it, and it changes on them. So I understand that we need to be a bit more defined about what we do, and that's one of my challenges. But I just, would anyone who's got any insight into pricing and that sort of thing would be invaluable to me, because I go round and round in houses with this, banging my head against a brick wall. So that really, it was like, how do you define your pricing value?
Okay, yeah.
Well, there's a big question, Gary.
Yeah, sure. Okay, yeah. So we've got quite a bit of experience in this. So I think the one thing that we have learned is that it's the price point obviously is critical to that recurring revenue model. So it's got to be relevant to the sector that they're in. So to give you a real world example for us, so let's say a small business comes to us in Manchester or Bromsgrove, wherever it is, and they're looking to do SEO. So that the amount that they pay has got to be relevant to the service that you are offering, but also what they're going to get out of it. So a real world example is someone comes for SEO for us. They're let's say they're a small company, I don't know, turnover, let's say 100 grand. They're not going to pay a company £5,000 a month to do SEO, because it's not relevant to what they're going to get back from that kind of model. But also it's going to be uncomfortable for them. So if they're looking at their bill at the end of every month thinking, ouch, I've got to pay 5,000 quid a month to this company, they're doing SEO, that's really, really going to hurt them. But if it's a lower amount, really comfortable, let's say £300, that kind of recurring revenue can go on for 12 months, 2 years, 3 years, without it really kind of hurting them. And the company that's offering that service obviously does a great service, and they can see the kind of attrition that's coming through from that work. So the one thing that I would suggest is, just make the costing as relevant as you can to the company, and, make sure it doesn't hurt them. I think that's the critical thing that we've learned, really. If on month 1 and 2, they're looking at that recurring revenue thinking, Christ, this is a lot of money to be paying out. It's not going to, it's not going to have the legs to run for 12 months or 2 years, really. I don't know if Louise or anyone can offer any further thoughts on that.
Well, Sarah, I hope that helped a little bit. And one thing I might suggest, Sarah, is when you go into the breakout rooms, and we have our little breakout rooms in a few minutes, that might be a challenge to throw out to the group then. Again, the people that have been with you, that have heard in the room now, might be able to help you in a little bit more detail as we have the more time to do that. So maybe do take that as your challenge. Sukraj, I can see that you have a question.
Yeah, thanks, Louise. Thanks, Paul. That was really insightful. Just a question as to how did you manage the shift in sort of strategic priorities from moving from a project-based way of working to that recurring way of working, in terms of getting the infrastructure set up internally, making sure strategically all the priorities aligned across the business? Because I guess that's where a lot of small businesses sort of fall down, I guess, because the bread and butter, what pays the bills as well, is that traditional stream of revenue that will come through. And sometimes it's quite difficult to make that shift, not just from a mindset, but also from a resource perspective, managing resources to get the new business line or service line ready to move to like a subscription-based service. So how did you find managing that?
Yeah, I mean, it is a challenge. I think one of the ladies mentioned earlier that she found kind of almost that like she's got kind of project-based work, but it's almost the hook. And for us as a business, that hook it's the one-off work. So if somebody comes to us, they want a website, it's great. Obviously, it's one ad hoc piece of work, but there's not a huge amount of value in it. But the value is that the companies then go on to take the recurring revenue model. So that's kind of how we've kind of transitioned it. So on the initial, consultation we have with companies, we kind of make sure that they understand that recurring revenue, for digital marketing, that's the side to go for them. That's how they're going to get their value back. And obviously, as a business, that has, that's allowed us to scale. So from kind of a point of view of kind of managing it, it's been quite granular in all honesty. So it's kind of, we've managed to bring on kind of a set amount per month, but because it's been quite granular, and slow, it has allowed us to scale. It's allowed us to have another office. It's allowed us to, bring on more staff. So, I fully appreciate we are quite lucky. There are some sectors that you guys are in that it won't be as easy to kind of build this recurring revenue model. So I do appreciate that our sector is relatively kind of simple to do it. But yeah, I suppose the answer to your question, we've been quite lucky. It's been quite granular really in terms of the growth.
And Gary, did it grow at the pace you wanted it to initially? I'll say that first sort of 90 days.
So I suppose to give you a bit of an idea, so in the last 3 years we've doubled in size. So that's purely been down to the recurring revenue. So recurring revenue for us is about 50%. So that gives you a kind of a rough idea. But yeah, I think, as I say, the beauty for us is that you are where you guys will know that you're building, with the recurring, you're building. So if you land one piece of recurring work, that's then coming in every single month, and you are quite literally scaling the business up. So yeah, as I say, it's worked really well for us.
Cheers.
Right, Gary. Thanks, Sir Craig. So I think that's all the time we've got for questions. So thank you very much indeed, Gary. And I think you brought up some really interesting points there. And this recurring revenue is an interesting one. When we talk about building for value, recurring revenue is one of the 8 drivers of building for value. It's really important. And it doesn't matter what kind of business you're in. We can usually find some form of recurring revenue somewhere. Okay. And it's just a case of looking for it. So, and it is the subject of other sort of scale ups we've done and things like that. But I haven't got time to go into it today. But hopefully, if you stick with us, we'll be able to come back to this idea of recurring revenue and thinking about the different elements of recurring revenue in your business. Obviously, the ideal model is that prescription. No, try that again. Subscription, where you get that every month and it comes back every month, and you don't think about it, and there it is. But there are another 7 different kinds of recurring revenue. So there's plenty to think about in terms of that model. So thank you very much, Gary. That was brilliant. Enjoyed that insight that sort of added to the thoughts that we were having. We are going to move now into the next little section, which is the section where you all get to look at and share your ideas and thoughts. So just going back to the presentation. We've heard from Gary now, and we're now going to go into this idea of the breakout sessions. We are going to break you out into rooms where I think we're going to have 6 businesses in each room. So there'll be, there's just the 6 of you. You're going to be together for an hour. Each of you is going to have 10 minutes in the spotlight, and there will be a facilitator, a chair in each room. So we've already set those rooms up. We've already got the chairs. The chairs will be responsible for keeping you to time, making sure everybody's involved, all of those things. So you don't have to worry about that. But 10 minutes is quite quick, and we will move you along quite fast. But equally, 10 minutes is a good amount of time to get a challenge out to the group, to have those insights and those experiences from the members of the group, and to take away some great takeaways. So please engage with that. And as I said, you've got people within the room who are going to keep it together.
So the topic is around scalable business model. Are we creating the kind of business that really could scale, or are we creating one that essentially is going to mean that we get stuck in that owner's trap idea, which is quite common, where when we start a business up, we're the ones that are doing everything, including the selling. So we have the relationships with people. We're probably good at what we do, because otherwise we wouldn't probably have thought we could start up in business on our own, which no doubt means then that clients will like what we do, and they'll ask us to do more things, maybe even slightly different things. So we'll start adding services that we can do, because I'm good at working with scale-ups. Maybe we could do startups. Maybe you could do all of these other things as well. And you think, yeah, actually, I could probably turn my hand to that. And before you know it, you're doing a whole range of things. And that, of course, then makes it really difficult for anybody else in the business to deal with those any inquiries. So what then tends to happen is all of the questions, any issues that are raised or whatever else, come back to the business owner. which means that then when there's additional things to need to be done, it's that relationship with the business owner, and we get caught in that trap. We just go around that cycle, and breaking it can be really difficult. So that's essentially the challenge: is how do we create a kind of business that is scalable, that isn't reliable on us, and also that we are focusing on the right kind of products and services to scale. So what do we think? Steve, I'm going to start with you. What comes to mind when I raise those challenges?
Look, a lot of our business is sort of designed around renewable revenue streams. So our growth isn't always spectacular, and there are other challenges around those renewable revenue streams as well, such as sort of cash flow and monitoring. So I think we've got a model that is scalable, but in order to scale the business properly, we've really got to sort of tighten down on our procedures and KPIs. KPIs is top of the list on my 90-day this quarter. We've got very good financial KPIs, so we understand what the business is and where the revenue is coming from. But operational KPIs, I did an analysis from our ticketing system. We introduced a new ticketing system in December, so we've gone a full quarter now, and our productivity according to our KPIs from our ticketing system is 17%.
Wow, okay.
So we've obviously got a massive issue there. Our turnover has gone up in those first quarters. It's gone up 100% in those quarters. So I know the work's being done, but it's not being recorded.
That's interesting. Okay, all right, good. So so a few things around there. So we'll come back to certainly some of the detail of that in the challenges when we raise those and when we're up in our spotlights. So you think you got the scalable as well, and you were talking about renewable revenue streams in terms of that, and also then the KPI side. David, what might you bring to the party around the scalable business model?
Yeah, I think, as you know, we looked at this and worked on this quite a bit over the years. Historically, we were bums on seats, building systems for people, and that wasn't necessarily a recurring revenue model. And as you know, we've flipped that to being, I don't know, 95, 98% sort of recurring revenue now. But I think particularly the moment when we were looking at investment and when we took the first round of investment, I think we were aware that we would only be able to grow as much as I was able to hand over control of certain things to other people. And I think that's an ongoing challenge. I think I probably spoke to you a couple of weeks ago about some of the things I do. In fact, I'm logging my time again to see where I spend my time, where I allocate my time, just to make sure that I've genuinely passed over the things that either I love doing that I shouldn't be doing, or the stuff that I hate doing that, I can hive off to somebody else. Or just making sure that those people have genuinely got responsibility and accountability for that job function. So take finance as an example. Should I be checking over invoices at month end to make sure they're accurate? Probably not, but the control freak in me says, actually, I still do. But I should trust Phil, and I should trust Rachel and things like that, because they've always been right. It's not a case that they've been catastrophically wrong. So but I need the feedback mechanisms. So I need to have that report that says, okay, here's our revenue, here's our breakdown by customer, those dashboards and things like that. So I think it's an ongoing challenge. I think hiring good people, that makes that job much, much easier if you can trust those people. So as you know, Cheryl's key to our business, and therefore she takes on that responsibility. I know it gets done. So I don't need to worry about that. But there's other areas that we perhaps still need to strengthen, particularly on the sales piece. Part of our goal now is to build that sales team. So I need somebody to lead that sales function. Initially, it'll be me involved, but yes, I think it's an ongoing struggle. I think because a business owner, you're the one with the vested interest, and it's your name above the door, it's your reputation, and often it's your house you put on the line, and it's often personal sacrifices you've made to get the business that far, and therefore it's a big trust thing. And I think that's a constant struggle, constant battle.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's certainly not one of those things that we can say, oh well, here's the quick fix. You just do this, and you'll suddenly have it all working brilliantly. There's a lot that goes into this, and you've covered a few things there as well. So, Jenny, anything? What would you add to this?
I'm just smirking, and Louise called me out on it as well, because it resonates absolutely. I think so much so that I literally have just come off a call with my colleague where we were going over KPIs, and one of those KPIs is the percentage of my time that's actually spent delivering. So yeah, completely recognise it, completely recognise that the way that the business has been built up has totally been about my capabilities, and then it does become really hard for other people to step into your shoes. Yeah. I think, as you all know, we've spent a lot of time over the last 3 to 6 months developing our first ever recurring revenue stream, which I hasten to say will be, it is technology based, and so I definitely won't be involved very much in that, I can assure you. So that's kind of a win-win, I have to say. But as with David, I think I completely recognise that a lot of it comes from that kind of controlling nature as well, especially around the accounting side of it. And Dave Perigo will probably start laughing in a minute as well, because he knows what I get involved in on that side. So yeah, definitely recognise it. I think it's something that all of us probably recognise, to be fair, and I think it's something that you can't just fix it, you have to be continually working on it, day after day. I almost need kind of a sign up on the wall next to my desk, asking me what am I doing and why am I doing it, which I think just because we've all gotten to the stages that we've gotten to because we've been prepared to do anything and build a business up around just ourselves to start with. Yeah. So slowly but surely letting go does definitely come back to recruiting the right people and having the trust in those people, and also taking some chances as well. Do you want to release some of the cash in the bank to get some people in to do different tasks that you shouldn't be doing, which ultimately, yes, you'll win in the end, but you've got to be prepared to take that risk and let go in the first place, which I think is a challenge, definitely, day after day.
Brilliant. All right. Good. Dave.
Yeah, but bless Kevin, I guess I see lots of clients in different sectors and industries, but the ones that are organised and kind of in control have that recurring revenue coming through. So I just see all the time a lot of clients that do one-off ad hoc work with lots of big margin. So much work and effort goes into each individual project. So the clients that have got the recurring revenue, decent margin, nice customers, staff, they're the ones that really can plan forward, especially over the last 10 years, pandemics, potential recessions, wars and so on. If you've got that recurring revenue coming through, then it gives you so much more ability to be able to plan and organise and, scale your business really. Yeah. And that's the key thing I see. So when clients come to me now and they say they've got a Go Carlos thing in place and it's monthly and it's, recurring revenue, it's, music to my ears really. And then you get someone that's going to obviously conquer Everest. It's just a nightmare, really. You've got to do that all over again, time after time after time. So that's the key, really. Everyone wants to do it. All my clients, everyone wants to do, get that recurring revenue model at high margins, and the rest kind of takes care of itself, I think.
Yeah, and that's absolutely. If we're fortunate enough to have an easy recurring revenue model, then certainly that's great. It's not necessarily, if we're in an industry that doesn't have that as a norm, it's not necessarily that easy, is it, to suddenly think about, oh, well, we'll just change over to a recurring revenue model?
No, not at all. I mean, it's kind of really, it's in depth. I mean, when we did it probably about 9 years ago, people were saying, well, I want your accounts on an annual basis, not monthly. And you've obviously got to sell the fact that you're supporting them, management accounts, payroll, blah, blah, blah. But if all of a sudden you're bucking the trend, but I think what's happened recently is everyone's on direct debits now, aren't they? The whole world is on direct debits, mobile phones, Netflix. It's kind of like more accepted than it used to be. And that's where you need to be, I think, if you can.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Claire, what do you think?
Well, first of all, I'd say I'm a little bit different situation to everybody else, because obviously I'm not the complete owner, and therefore potentially don't have that mindset as much as control and as everyone else has. And also, I never had to set the business up from scratch and go from one person to 30 people. Obviously, those 30 people have grown from 15 people since the investment, but and so I have that experience, but I don't have any experience really of setting it up from scratch. And what I found is that when I took over the investment, I didn't have a marketing team, I didn't have anybody doing socials, I didn't have anyone doing business development. I didn't really have a right hand, and so you do run around doing everything, and you have to make sure you've got enough revenue to support those people coming in. But the one thing I've realised is the people you bring in then do a lot more than you would ever have done doing it on your all by yourself. So it might be an investment, but actually the windfall is greater once you make that leap. And obviously we've all seen Kevin's graph where you fall down the pit of doom when you're jumping from staff numbers to staff numbers, and that can happen. You recruit for a contract, but I think we don't have a recurring revenue model as such, as in we haven't got Go Cardless set up, but we do have recurring knowledge and revenue because we have contracted clients. And so although it's not on Go Cardless because it changes every month or whatever, we do have contracts and we recruit for contracts. So we're quite lucky in that respect to know that there's a certain volume of work coming, and therefore we have the confidence to increase our team. And I guess you started off by saying, you're good at one thing, and then you start adding other things that clients want to your portfolio. And obviously I appreciate in David's line of work, that can be a nightmare because clients have always got a wish list of a billion things long, and you've got to work out what's best for all of your clients, not just one. But for us, I guess we've always responded, our growth or our change of services has always responded to kind of the tenders that have come out, stuff we need to do to keep a competitive edge, or any innovation that's come out that we could take advantage of. So and then we've become this machine now that offers everything for non-spoken, and it's really working well because everyone has everything from us, not just one thing. But I appreciate it takes a while to get to that point.
Yeah, very good. There's a lot of things that go into this scalability side of things. Some of them are strategic, some of them are tactical. So there's a couple of things that we're picking out really for focus on and around this time to think about. Just make sure that we are thinking about things in a reasonable way. The first, from a strategic point of view, is that idea of focus. If we are jack of all trades, master of none, if, for example, it's very difficult to build a scalable business model on there. So, I'll remind you of the concept that we've talked about before, the hedgehog idea. It's a Jim Collins idea, but it's that combination of what we're passionate about doing as a business. What is our core purpose? What do we stand for? What are we passionate about? With what we're brilliant at. What are we really good at, the best at? Where's our offer advantage in terms of what that compared with the competition that's out there, in combination with the third thing with what pays well, right? So there's no good focusing on something that we love doing and we're brilliant at, but actually nobody, there's no money in it. So we've got to have that combination to get the right strategic focus, if you like. But then we also want to do a check on it to make sure whether it is a scalable focus in its own right. And that's the idea of the TVR. And a couple of those points have come out already in the discussion. So if the T stands for teachable, so whatever we focus on has to be something that we can teach to other people. It's no good if it's high level consulting, and Dave was alluding to this earlier on with some of his clients. If it's something that you're brilliant at, but only you can do it, and it's almost impossible for you because it's years worth of experience and education and whatever else has got you to that point, and you can't impart that knowledge to somebody else. Then that's not going to be a scalable business model. So that's the first one on teachable. The second, the V, is valuable, and that really is around differentiation. You know, how differentiated is that offer compared with what's around, and does it transfer into some kind of competitive advantage? So you've got a positioning that customers recognize and they're prepared to pay for. So in other words, that's where the V for valuable bit comes in. In other words, they value it and they're prepared to probably pay a premium for it. All right. So it's got to be something around those. Or if it doesn't give you in that respect, is it something that you've got such an advantage in terms of the way you deliver it that you've got a real cost advantage and you can do it at the same price as other people but make more profit? So does it give you a competitive advantage, essentially, is what the V is about, but that's the value. And the R is what's been mentioned a number of times, which is that element of repeatability. And great, if it's recurring revenue model, subscription basis, fantastic. But equally, it doesn't have to be. And Claire, you mentioned contracted revenue. That's predictable, it's repeatable, and you know that you've got a 3-year contract or a 2-year contract, and you know that you've got a certain volume that goes with that. So that's nice and predictable, gives you that stability that you can then build on moving forward, rather than the peaks and troughs that Dave was talking about and you were mentioning as well there, Claire. So that TVR, and there's a good exercise to go through. Once if you start to think, hang on a minute, we've just got so many things we're doing as a business, we're offering to people, list them down and simply rate them out of 10, each product or service, rate them out on this TVR out of 10. So how teachable is it? You might start with 1 and you go, well, I think that's all right, but let's just take it could be a graphic designer business, for example. Let's take our consultancy for graphic design, right? Marketing consultancy. Well, is that teachable to somebody else? Kind of. Maybe we'll give it a 6 or something like that. Is it valuable? Yes, very valuable, because the clients will pay for that. So it might be an 8, 9, or even a 10 for that. Is it repeatable? Does it lead to other things? Maybe. So you might give it a reasonable score on that. But the point is, you've given yourself a bit of a benchmark, and then you take the next service you might do, which might be web design, and you do the same. So is it more or less teachable than the consulting that we've just done? Is it more or less valuable? Is it more or less repeatable? And you do a relative rating on those. And then what you'll find is you will probably have a cluster of ones that give you a higher total score than others. And that should give you a clue as to where to focus, right? If you're worried about that. Now, I know you guys have got established businesses and you've got pretty good ideas of what you're doing there. It's always worth a quick double check against your hedgehog and against the TVR to make sure we're focusing in the right areas. Louise, does that make sense? Anything that you'd like to add to that?
No, it makes perfect sense. And interestingly, it just reminds me, and Kevin's not expecting this to come, but it just reminded me of something. We developed the Dream tool last year for the sales and marketing side, but I've got a couple of clients now using it to examine products and services, and it's working extremely effectively. So it's if you like, it's taking that benchmarking and that scoring that you've just been talking about, Kevin, and then adding an extra layer of which do we want to ditch because they aren't hitting that score, or then maybe they're not where we want to be. Which do we expand? Which do we maintain? Is there anything new we want to attain, and what do we want to re-engage with? So it actually, you can lead it on to doing that kind of little analysis once you've done the sort of scoring on it, and make some clear decisions about what you should be doing about them, rather than necessarily just going, okay, I've done the score, right, we'll move on. So it gives you a structure, if you like, to actually take that to the next stage and make some decisions about your products and services in just the same way as we were using it before to examine customers and markets.
Good. Okay. Yeah, Claire. Yeah.
I was just going to say, I think you have to look at value in a bit of a wider sense. So it might be that one of the products that actually get people into your business is actually quite low value, but it then feeds into the other more high value services. So for instance, someone might come to us for deaf awareness, then they have an increase in deaf customers and deaf employees, and then they go, right, we need interpretation, we need translate, and they're the more high value items than a deaf awareness course, but it kind of plants the seed.
Absolutely.
I wouldn't get rid of it because it might be low value, but actually it's kind of not a loss leader, but something that is a bit more of a pull. And the other thing as well you mentioned was jack of all trades, master of none. I do think there is value in listening to clients and trying to bring in services that potentially you aren't the master of, but you use somebody on a freelance basis or consultancy basis that is the master of, to stop them going to somebody else that might offer both those things, because you might lose them then as a client for that one thing you offered, and then because you didn't offer that other thing. And that's how we've grown. We've literally brought in freelancers to do some of the stuff, and then when it gets to a value or a revenue that we can afford to employ someone and improve margin, we bring someone in to do that in-house instead.
Yes, I think that's right. So got really good points there. We need to apply the thinking on top of any scoring that we do, and that idea of the sprat to catch the mackerel concept absolutely is key. So we've got to be careful not to ditch something that could be the key to unlocking the bigger revenues. Equally, sometimes when we might have a few low value services, they might have scored a bit low on the TVR scale, but if we were to put them together, so individually they might be not very differentiable, but if we put them together in the right bundle, then it might be that creates something else that is then very differentiated. And there's been a few examples in business where people have done that very successfully, rebranded it with like a fantastic name as well that goes with it, and that can work really, really nicely. Anybody else got any comments to do with that? Happy with that?
Yeah.
All right, good. And I think that David, a couple were talking earlier on in the beginning about as well, just moving on a little bit to the getting ourselves out of the day-to-day, which of course is part of this and wasn't really the main focus of the TVR and the hedgehog, but that exercise of constantly looking for what we can get ourselves out of next is a really good mindset to have. What are the next roles or tasks that I want to get off of my plate next, and how am I going to do that? That constant thinking, and I would encourage you every 90 days, at least within your 90-day planning, is to think about that. What are the next things you're going to get off of your plate? And there's lots of little ways that you can do that. One of the ways I quite like, we've talked about it before, is that teachable, valuable matrix. So vertical axis, how teachable is it, with it being not teachable at the top, and across the horizontal axis, things that add real value to the business. So therefore the top right box, if you like, are things that are really valuable to the business, but equally they're not things that really can be taught that well. Whereas the ones in the bottom left near the origin are tasks and things that are relatively low value and they're easy to teach. Well, clearly, if you're doing things in that box, they're things that really you ought to be able to find a way to get somebody else to do, whether it's automating it, delegating it, could be outsourcing or employing, whatever, but finding a way out of that. It's a neat little simple tactical tool that might help with that. Don't forget to take a look at www.bizsmarts.co.uk to access a great range of resources to help you in your scale-up journey. So that's bizsmarts.co.uk, which is bizsmarts.co.uk.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.